Hey guys, Angie Atkinson here, and today at QueenBeing.com we're going to talk about how to explain narcissists and no contact to friends and family when they ask you. All right, so let's get started. All right, so we're going to start right here. The fact of the matter is that narcissists themselves are difficult to explain, and this is especially true if you are in a situation where the person knows you're a narcissist but maybe doesn't know them as well as you do, or the person is maybe the parent of a narcissist or a child of a narcissist, things like this, okay? So, one of the things that you can say is that a narcissist is someone who really looks for constant affirmation, regardless of anything else that they see in their life. So if they're getting some affirmations from if people are telling them, "Hey, you're great, you're awesome," they're happy. But they will still continue to look for those over and over and over again. They need constant validation, which is ironic because they offer the actual opposite of that to their supply. Okay. Anyway, a lot of people ask me, how can I explain to to my people, my family, my friends, all these things, my narcissist? How do I explain what narcissism is? How do I explain how I got this information? Whether it's because they go no contact, or because they want a friend, relative, or therapist to understand what they're dealing with, right? They just don't know where to begin. So when you are affected by emotional abuse in a toxic relationship with a narcissist, obviously it feels really hard to explain to people, right? I mean, especially if you've done your best to hide the problem up until the time you try and explain, which is very, very common, my friend, because you're embarrassed about it. It's not something you want to tell anybody about. It's not something, and even if you do tell people about it, sometimes they get tired of hearing about it, right? But generally, most of us find that we don't tell a lot of people about the abuse that we're suffering because we're embarrassed. And sometimes we don't even realize we're being abused because this kind of abuse really sneaks up on us. Okay. So if we don't say anything, people are like, "What do you mean? I thought everything was fine with you guys," right? Anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today. All right. So, first of all, how do you explain a narcissist? Well, here's a general, like, overall explanation. Okay. Toxic narcissism is not about simple vanity. People misunderstand that a lot, but it's being so self focused that you're only concerned with your own feelings and you have no ability to empathize with the feelings of others. That's a very simple explanation. Okay. A narcissist has no concept of empathy. You feel me? So, sure, maybe that doesn't seem super scary on the surface, right? But what happens when you put a narcissist in a position of power in your life? Well, let's talk. I'm going to teach you how to explain to your friends and family how narcissists control their victims. Okay, so you can explain that a narcissist expects absolute submission from you, whether or not they say it out loud, right? Now, they justify this to you and even to themselves, by sometimes forcing you to say you deserve it, right? Essentially to affirm the abuse itself. And that's something that, you know what, they'll act like they have a right to do this because, or even that they're doing you a favor, or it's their duty to do it because they're just doing it for your own good, and blah blah blah. They'll expect you to do what they say because they know better than you, and they will spend the entire relationship teaching you that, teaching you not to make moves without talking to them first, teaching you not to do anything without talking to them first and getting their opinion. And this is just incredibly devastating for most of the people who have to go through it, right? Of course. So, for example, if a narcissistic husband takes his wife's keys to work, right? Maybe he wants to keep her from leaving the house. Well, he'll say it's because she herself is not strong or smart or streetwise enough to leave the house alone, and he will work very hard to convince her of this, and essentially makes her feel as though she deserves it. She deserves to be stuck in the house. She deserves to be dependent upon him because she's incapable of doing anything herself, even going out alone, right? And basically, she begins to depend on him to get even her most basic needs met. I mean, quite honestly, that is nearly the definition of codependent in a nutshell, right? People won't often believe you when you say that person's a narcissist. Well, how do you know they're a narcissist? How can you diagnose somebody? You're not a psychologist or whatever. So, how do you explain why the narcissist doesn't have a psychological diagnosis? Okay, well, guess what? I'm going to tell you. You're going to carefully help them. You're going to help them understand by carefully describing to them exactly what you've dealt with. Like, pick a behavior in detail, and tell them every single little thing that would be involved. Give examples, during the time that you lived with your narcissist or the time that you spent with your narcissist if you didn't actually live with them, right? So, like I said, give examples and point out to this person that you're explaining it to that, what, no mentally healthy person would do this stuff, right? They would not behave this way. They wouldn't perform these actions. Those things aren't normal. And that person will have to agree with you unless they too are a narcissist, in which case I wouldn't bother trying to explain. But there's clearly a disorder here when it comes to narcissistic abuse, and the person who's doing this to you, the person who is the narcissist in your life, there's a disorder there, or they wouldn't be taking it to this extreme level, right? And the disorder not only overwhelms the narcissist and the narcissist's entire self, but it also intrudes on your life and the lives of other people. Another thing you can do is that you can explain to your person that you're speaking to, that your friend or family member, that researchers have noted that narcissists and people affected with certain other mental disorders anyway, well, they struggle to be self-aware, okay? And that in itself, kind of puts it all in a nutshell. The person has these issues. The person is incapable of being aware of those issues because of the fact that they have the issues, right? Because a narcissist needs to really believe in that false self in order for him or her to continue to function in the world. So what if you don't want to spread your business around, and what if you just don't want to talk about it? Then what do? You don't want to tell anybody anything, right? Maybe you don't want to talk about it or whatever. Well, you could simply say that your personalities just aren't great for one another, or, and that's that. And if that's more comfortable to you, by all means. You could just say that maybe you were a toxic combination or something, in along those lines. Ultimately, it's all up to you. You can say as much or as little as you like based on who you're talking to and what your particular situation is. Just remember this, my friend, you are now in control of your life, okay? So do what feels best to you when you're explaining a narcissist to someone who asks what that's all about. And don't allow it to become an issue that complicates your life, okay? Look, you're going no contact for a reason, right? All right, well, speaking of no contact, we're going to talk about that next. How do you explain to friends, family members, coworkers, relatives, all these things, neighbors, anyone who asks, how do you explain no contact? Why are you making this choice to cut this whole person out of your life, especially if the narcissist is someone that you consider family? Well, let's talk about it. So generally speaking, by the time you've started to realize that there is an issue with a narcissist, you're so deep within the enmeshment of that relationship that you need to reconnect with your support network, right? And often you need to explain to them why you're leaving. So if you need to explain narcissists, the previous part of the video will help you, but if you need to explain why you're leaving, that's where you're on this part of the video. In some situations, you might need to help mutual friends or family members understand what you were dealing with, obviously, whether it's to get support, to get out, or just to explain why you've gone. Many times people don't realize that there's a big issue because you keep it kind of quiet, like I said before. Narcissists are so good at keeping on their masks with outside people, people who they don't consider inner circle, which usually includes you if you're here watching this video, right? So there's that to consider. Well, because they seem so very helpful to people, they seem easygoing, happy, a lot of times awesome, a lot of people can't imagine a world in which that poor guy or girl could ever be what you claim he or she is, okay? And that leads to a lot of painful questioning and or pressure, and not to mention flying monkey behaviors on their part, sometimes willingly, sometimes otherwise. In either case, life could start to feel really hard for you, okay? So what do you say when people ask why you've gone no contact with a narcissist? What are the best things? Well, to be honest with you, you're going to need two answers. The extended version for people who really give a shit, and a short and sweet version for those who don't need all the details. Now, if you've already told everyone who really needs to know, maybe you want to send out a few letters to explain in advance, or not. Here, I'm going to share with you a real quick FAQ for guidelines, to help you decide which objections might come your way, and then to head them off in the letter, okay? So this is just an option, but if this is an option, if the letter thing doesn't work for you, you can still use these answers on the fly, okay? So the short answer, what do you say when someone asks why you've gone no contact? Well, generally, you need to remember that you don't owe most people an explanation. And if they ask, you can just say, look, it's a long story and it's better this way in my life. If that person is someone who really deserves an answer, such as members of your family, for example, maybe you can simply explain that the relationship has always been difficult for you and that you're no longer able to try to fix it and preserve your mental and emotional health at the same time. Don't say anything directly bad about the person. Just let them know that it isn't a healthy relationship for you at this time. Whether this is a parent or a spouse, this can work if you just keep it positive. Now, from me to you, if you have other family members who support your decision to go no contact or friends, ask them ahead of time if they'd be okay with helping to field some of these questions for you if you feel overwhelmed by them. Now, here's the extended version. Okay, how do you answer questions from family members and interested friends when you have to explain why you went no contact with a narcissistic parent, relative, spouse, whatever? Well, here's another FAQ for you, my friend, and some solid answers that are going to help you start thinking about how you can respond when someone asks you why you've gone no contact with a narcissist. All right, it could be useful to you. All right, so number one, why don't you talk to your narcissistic parent anymore? Let's say. Well, you can say, I decided to stop all contact between my parent and me because we've always, or for a very long time, had a very difficult relationship. I decided that in order to preserve my mental and physical health and well-being, I need to stop making these efforts. It's not helpful. It's not making life better. I just want to tell you real quick, I am always tell people that trying to communicate with a narcissist and hoping to get through to him or her could be compared to banging your head against a brick wall and hoping it will make your headache go away. Okay? It's the opposite of what's going to happen, my friend. I know it sucks, but it is. All right, moving right along. Next question. Would it help if I talked to him or her for you? And you don't want to stay no contact forever, do you? Well, what you would say is something like this. Well, hey, thanks so much for offering. Your support really does mean the world to me. And listen, I'll let you know if I need help, okay? But for now, I'd really appreciate it if you'd please respect my carefully considered decision, okay? That means please don't try to help me reconcile. I don't want you to be a go-between, and I don't want you to help us get back together. I just want you to be my friend or family member or whatever, and that's it, all right? Next question. Well, I can't imagine you not wanting to see your own father, mother, brother, sister, whatever, if it's a family member, or I can't imagine you not wanting to see that person, your spouse, whatever. How can you be so cold? Well, here's how you answer that one. Please understand that I did not and I do not take this decision lightly. It has taken a lot of soul searching and consideration to get here. I have very substantial reasons, but for the sake of integrity, I'd rather not talk about them. Now, you can explain as much as you're comfortable with, again, to people that you believe will be able to understand, but know that you're not required to do that. That is not a requirement here. You don't have to. You can only say a little bit if you want, all right? Now, what if they say something like, say it's a narcissistic parent, right? What if they say something like, but I've known you since you were a kid and you always seemed happy. You never said you were being abused before. You would say, yeah, you're right, my friend, you're right, but you didn't see what happened behind closed doors. And I've learned that emotionally abused kids do tend to be hard to detect because they are so desperate for love and approval that they are often on their best behavior at all times in an effort to win their parents' love and attention, and that's where I came from. See what I mean? Now, next question. I don't understand you. Your parents did everything for you. You never went without anything. What was so bad? You'll hear that one. Well, look, here's your answer, my friend. It's really common for narcissistic parents to provide their kids with all of the physical necessities and often even material possessions because it looks good. They don't do this out of love. They do it in order to be better than other people. Okay? And while they are piling on the goodies, they are often starving their children of the basic kindness, gentleness, and understanding that kids need. Okay? They never experience the sense of unconditional love that some kids feel from their parents and the sense of pride and approval that everybody seeks. Okay? So if you can explain that to someone carefully and say that, look, I've done my research, I know what the deal is, here's how it all lines up, that does the trick a lot of times. Not always, because the fact of the matter is lots of people just won't get it. I don't know how you can do this to family, because that's because they're not in it or because they are in it and they're very codependent. You don't have to be codependent. You don't have to be someone who just sits and waits for your life to go because someone else tells you to. You feel me? Don't forget. All right, another question. But why didn't you tell me sooner? Well, here's your answer, my friend. Hey, to be honest, it's really common for children who are emotionally abused to not realize it until they're older. According to my research, it's because in order to get through the difficulties faced by children of narcissists, you have to create a certain sort of false reality in order to survive it. Okay? Now, same deal for emotional abuse with a spouse. You know, you don't realize it at first. And according to, you can tell them, according to what I found out, you do have to. I've created a certain false reality to get through it, and part of that is my false self that I've showed you, and I'm sorry for that. But it could be due to, it's a survival effort is my bottom line, but it might be due in part to the fact that most children aren't able to understand what's happening to them when they're little, and if they are, a lot of times by the time we become adults, if we've never understood what was going on, we kind of, without even realizing it, attract the same sort of partners into our life, and we keep repeating those behaviors, right? But in some cases, people don't even know that their home lives aren't normal, whether they're children or adults. And kids will become unwilling conspirators for emotionally abusive parents in helping them hide their behavior. And guess what? Wives and husbands will do the same thing to each other. So, like if a wife is a narcissist, her husband will cover for her, and vice versa. Okay? So, know that. Well, what if somebody says, but so and so always said such great things about you? How could you possibly? They couldn't possibly feel the way that you say they do, right? Or be the way that you say they are. And then, you just say, well, look, that's partially because narcissists want everyone to believe that every part of their lives are perfect. And because, as the child or spouse or brother or sister of a narcissist, that person, the narcissist, sees you as a very simple something, an extension of him or herself. That's it. You're not a real person to him or her. So if he or she said something bad about you, then they'd be saying something bad about themselves to that person in their minds, if that makes any sense. Now, of course, all bets are off when it's time for a smear campaign, because then they're trying to cover their asses and whatever. But anyway, let me just wrap this up. We've gone a little long, and I apologize for that. But now it's your turn, okay? Have you ever survived going no contact before? And if so, how did you explain to people who asked you? Share your thoughts and your experiences in the comments section, because you could really help other survivors if you have some good ideas for them. I'd love it if you'd share them. Additionally, if you are going through this right now and you don't know what to say, if you have specific questions, leave them below and I'll try to answer them in another video, okay? Or right there in the comments. Okay, you guys, I will talk to you soon. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Hugs and love. Thanks for letting me be a part of your life, and thanks for letting me be part of your recovery. And hey, thanks for being a part of my life.